Okay, good morning, everyone.
Welcome to our third session in the Food Systems in Season for the spring edition. And we are excited to have a special guest with us today, Terra Freeman. And in our first slideshow, I wanted to share we do have 2 additional sessions upcoming. So we have one next Friday and the following Friday. And I will tell you, Preserving the Harvest with Luann and Melanie next week on the 25th. And then on April 1st, we will have an open Q&A with all of our expert speakers that have been with us for the spring series. So we hope you will join us again for those sessions. And we are going to queue up our first video that Terra has prepared for us. I think we're in good shape this week, and it's called Gardening for Health and Wellness.
And when we start the video, you may want to turn your volume all the way up because the volume doesn't come through very loud in the presentation here. And in just a moment, I'll go ahead and put a link to the YouTube video in the chat box so that if you want to go back and watch it later on or hold on to it, you'll have a link to be able to watch it. So let's see if the technology is going to work here today.
Hello, my name is Terra Freeman. I'm the Horticulture Extension Agent and Master Gardener Program Coordinator for UF IFAS Extension St. Johns County. One of my favorite aspects of working in the field of horticulture is knowing that gardening can have profound positive effects on people's health and well-being. I get to teach people how to garden, and in turn, they can experience improved health from gardening or by simply enjoying a garden setting such as this one. Gardeners can grow their own food, cultivate beautiful flowers, and whether it's realized consciously or not, experience other benefits related to improved health and well-being. In fact, horticulture has been used as therapy for centuries. In recent decades, social scientists have been studying and documenting this phenomenon. There are 4 different horticulture therapy models, as defined by the American Horticulture Therapy Association, that are used to provide people-plant programming. We have horticulture therapy, therapeutic horticulture, social or community horticulture, and vocational horticulture. So let's discuss the difference. Horticulture therapy is the most formal. This kind is facilitated by a certified horticulture therapist, and the purpose is to achieve specific and documented treatment goals. So the therapist will implement specific goals for a particular health issue, whether physical or psychological. The next kind is therapeutic horticulture. This is less formal, and that the goals are not as clinically defined and documented, but the leader does have training in the use of horticulture as a therapeutic medium. Participants strive to improve their well-being through active or passive involvement with plants or plant people related activities. Certain veterans farms could fall into this category. The next kind is social or community horticulture. Now, the focus is on social interaction and horticultural activities. So there are no defined treatment goals or therapists present. It's more of a leisure or recreational activity related to plants and gardening. So an example would be participation in a community garden or a garden club or the Master Gardener Volunteer Program. And then we have vocational horticulture. Now this focuses on providing training that enables individuals to work in the horticulture industry professionally. So this could be in a school setting, a rehabilitation facility, or even prisons. In vocational horticulture therapy settings, people learn to work independently, problem solve, follow directions, and they teach job skills related to greenhouse, nursery, or other types of landscape employment. Quantitative and qualitative research has proven proven the benefits of horticulture therapy in many areas of life, including cognitive, social, emotional, physical, and physiological health. Cognitive benefits relate to the mental processes of thinking, perception, memory, judgment, and reasoning. Through gardening, you can encourage observation, increase your knowledge, attain new skills, increase your vocabulary by learning Latin names or different plant names, stimulates your memory to learn about the different species of plants, can increase your attention span and focus because you can get really zoned in on your gardening task. It helps with following directions, problem solving, attention to task, and just general brain functioning. So a horticulture therapist would choose tasks that fit the neurodevelopmental needs of their client. For example, even just writing the name of the plant species on a plant ID label, it encourages cognitive skills and increasing your vocabulary. Gardening imparts many social benefits as well. It increases our communication skills as well as opportunities for interactions with others. It's something as simple as conversation while weeding, or cooperating with others in gardening tasks during the Master Gardener program, or even sharing your harvest with others. Gardening has many emotional benefits as well. It increases our feelings of self-worth, confidence, and self-esteem to nurture a plant from seed to harvest, or to plant to transplant and watch it bloom. We get really excited, enthusiastic. It gives us something to feel really interested in. It sparks our creative drive so that we can create beautiful gardens such as this one. It's also really good at relieving aggression or tension, digging in the soil, pulling weeds. I have a favorite quote I'd like to read. As we work with plants, we deepen our understanding of the life cycle. Plants teach us that every living being goes through periods of new beginnings, growth, emptiness, death, and rebirth. As we cultivate plants, they reciprocate by cultivating within us a deeper connection to the seasons of our life. In doing so, they inspire identification with the spirit of life that resides in all living beings. So the physical benefits of gardening may be one of the most obvious aspects. So obviously it provides exercise, and also people are often more willing to pursue physical goals with greater ease in the garden than they would be in a traditional therapy room. So gardening can increase our balance, it can increase our strength, mobility, range of motion, even hand-eye coordination with weeding or planting a seed. Gardens also bring a sense of familiarity and sensory stimulation from being surrounded by plants. The reward of beauty and harvest, it all plays a part in the process. So, for example, in horticulture therapy, the act of planting a seed or transplanting seedlings can be part of the treatment plan for someone recovering from a stroke. Physiologically speaking, gardening not only pulls us out of our heads, but scientists have found that gardening decreases cortisol, the hormone released when we're under stress. It can lower our blood pressure, our heart rate, and relieve stress. In one study, people performed a stressful task and then were randomly assigned to 30 minutes of either outdoor gardening or indoor reading. And the researchers measured the level of cortisol in their saliva. They discovered that both gardening and reading decreased cortisol, but the decrease were significantly stronger in the gardening group. What's wonderful about the therapeutic and healing effects of horticulture is that it can be used in many diverse settings and situations. Hospitals, rehabilitation centers, youth outreach, recovery programs, nursing homes, prisons, schools, and even demonstration gardens, such as the one we're standing in.
Research confirms that healthful benefits accrue when people connect with nature and plants by viewing or interacting with them. According to Gardening is Beneficial for Health, a meta-analysis, gardening can improve physical, psychological, and social health, which can, from a long-term perspective, alleviate and prevent various health issues facing today's society. Studies have shown that gardening increases individuals' life satisfaction, vigor, psychological well-being, sense of community, and cognitive functioning.
I hope this has inspired you to get your hands in the soil or visit a local garden or green space, such as a nature trail, to experience the myriad healing benefits working with or being around plants has to offer.
Okay, I feel motivated to get out there in my garden this weekend. Whoops.
I do too. Thank you, Terra. And Terra, I don't know if you had anything else you wanted to add, and my apologies, we didn't introduce you appropriately. So if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Oh, hi. Good morning, everyone. My name's Terra Freeman. I'm the Urban and Commercial Horticulture Extension Agent for UF IFAS Extension, St. Johns County, as well as the Master Gardener Program Coordinator here. So we are very fortunate that we have 54 acres of land, and many of those acres are in gardens, demonstration gardens, and our master gardeners, a lot of the work we do is in the garden. So we're very fortunate to have those as a resource, and that's where we were able to film this video.
And if you haven't visited St. Johns County, if you're ever this way in St. Augustine, come on by. It's absolutely breathtaking. It's a great place to be mindful in, which we're going to be covering in just a few minutes.
Yeah, I've been there before. You guys have a very large piece of property there that looks very good and very relaxing gardens also.
It is. And I don't know if you guys, go ahead, Terra.
I was going to say they're a work in progress, and it depends on the time of year that you are here, how they look, but they are a lot of fun and just a wonderful place to explore and practice, and definitely a great place to get away. And, just talking about the health and wellness benefits, I know all of us in the office, if you need a break or a lunch break, or you're feeling stressed, it's a great place to escape. And a lot of the neighboring businesses, the employees will take their lunch breaks in our gardens, and whether they know it or not, intentionally, they are getting some of those benefits from just being in that green space.
And there's some beautiful benches out there too by the water feature, and just beautiful gardens. So very fortunate to work where we work.
We are.
Exactly. And I think that we all know that there are benefits to gardening. And a lot of people might think, well, if I have a vegetable garden, the benefit is ideally I'm going to be able to pick vegetables from it eventually. Or if I have a butterfly or native plant garden, I'm going to get butterflies, and they're very nice to look at. But I didn't realize all the different physical and psychological and mental benefits to it also.
And there's so much to it. I was fortunate during my undergrad at Virginia Tech to participate in one of the first horticulture therapy educational programs. So, that was it. That was in the 90s. And I had a professor, Dr. Diane Relf, and she was at the forefront for teaching horticulture therapy. And so I actually have a certificate in horticulture therapy while I was studying horticulture there. And now UF has a program in horticulture therapy as well. So it's definitely a practice that's gaining popularity. And I think when we do the research that actually proves all of the health benefits to it, that it just helps to legitimize it, and hopefully can be integrated into more healthcare settings, because it can really help patients heal They've done studies where, this one has always stood out in my memory, where if patients are in a hospital setting and if they have a view out the window of nature or a garden, and they heal more quickly. So for example, if they are physically in a situation where they're having a hard time turning over in their bed, if they start off facing away from the garden, but they know that that window towards a garden or towards some plants that people bring them are on the other side, they are quicker to motivate, to turn, and and it helps physically heal them more quickly, because to have that view of nature and trees, it just serves as that extra level of motivation for healing. And that's just a tiny example.
Yeah, I had the chance to visit up in Gainesville. I believe it's Wilmot Gardens, where they teach the horticultural therapy, and they do a lot of really amazing work up there with a lot of different groups of people. It's more than just local residents planting a garden. They do a lot of work with a lot of people.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it can be beneficial on so many levels. Whatever, we all have things we need to work on in life, and depending on the severity, if you need an actual horticulture therapist, or if you just go out on your own and garden, you're going to feel better, whatever's going on. Especially, within the time of the pandemic, just the stress relief, and on so many levels, it helps us feel better.
Well, I know I always feel better after I actually get out there and clean up my vegetable garden and get things planted on time. I feel a great sense of accomplishment.
Absolutely.
So if you think about it, anytime that you're going out into the garden, I know a lot of the folks that join us on Food Systems in Season have gardens or are planting a garden. And when you go out there, what are you doing? You're being intentional about your purpose outside. And that's kind of what we're talking about with mindfulness today, too, is that reaping all these extra benefits and doing something you really enjoy because you're focused on it, not allowing those outside factors play into your focus. So it really helps you to keep that clear mind.
Yeah, and I guess that would apply even if people are raising chickens or bees or
Yep.
have aquaculture and they're raising fish, all the different topics that we've covered here in Food Systems in Season. It applies really to all of them.
It really does. And mindfulness is really something that you can apply to pretty much anything you do in life. But I'll share more about it when we get into the next part.
I think you have a PowerPoint here on that. So let's go ahead and pull that back up here.
Yeah, and we'll just have a conversation. So feel free to jump in the chat if you have questions or comments. And Bill, I don't know if I have access to, I don't think I do, have to go ahead and change the slides over. So when you're thinking about mindfulness, when we just kind of introduced it already, it's paying attention to what's happening right now. You're not thinking about what happened in the past or what's in the future. It's taking that time, you're slowing down, you're being present in that very moment. It's an intentional awareness. Mindfulness is all about allowing your thoughts to come and go without judgment. So if that chatter starts in your head, you acknowledge it and then you let it go. It's acceptance and it's a state of being. And so the benefits of mindfulness, they have shown significant effects on stress, quality of life, as well as overall well-being. And on the next slide, there are different types of benefits, and Terra talked about them in her video as well, being out in the garden, but it's going to include physiological, psychological, and even spiritual mindfulness, spiritual benefits rather. And we have an EDIS publication that Dr. Fortune and Dr. Harris put together. We'll drop that link in the chat. But it goes through each of those benefits in more detail, but I'm just going to highlight a few of that really stood out to me. One was increased immune function, the lowering of blood pressure, reducing fatigue and stress. And Terra hit it on the head too, like especially during the last few years. We always have stress in our lives, but maybe a lot more stress in the last few years. So being mindful and practicing mindfulness is one way to help reduce that stress. Also, it allows for an increased focus, positive emotions while reducing the negative ones. It also allows you to kind of take a step back and be able to respond to those stressful situations and with less emotional reactivity. It allows you to continue with those positive emotions, practicing empathy as well as self-discipline. So there are several techniques to practice mindfulness, and we're only going to talk about a few. And I know today's talk is mostly about mindful eating, but I can't start mindful eating without talking about mindful breathing and meditation. I know for myself, during the last few years, this has been a practice that I do. It doesn't mean you have to be on the floor with your legs crossed, or you can see this young lady in the picture is in a chair. Because there are multiple types of meditation, the National Institute of Health has gone through and reviewed quite a few types of meditation. And 4 common elements that you see on the slide here is that, one, you want to be in a place where it's quiet with little to no distractions if possible. You be in a comfortable position. So that could be in a chair, it could be outside, sitting at the picnic table, whatever is comfortable for you. You just want to be in a good, comfortable position as well as posture. And you want to have a focus of attention. And so this could be focusing on your breath, which is where that mindful breathing comes in, or it could be a series of words or one word, but it's allowing you to keep your mind focused on one thing. And then you want to have that open attitude. And this is where that acceptance part comes in, not judging any of the thoughts that come into your mind. And it does take practice to do this. When I first started, I don't know if you guys ever saw that movie Up. I think it was a animated movie, and the little dog that goes squirrel, and then he gets distracted really easy. So I kind of feel I was that way, but mindfulness is helped me to capture that focus. And then if I do see the squirrel, okay, I acknowledge it, it's there, and then I bring it back to whatever it is I'm trying to focus on. And because I teach chronic disease prevention and awareness, on the next slide, there is a form of mindful walking. So with mindful walking, as you can see, the lady in the slide here, she's looking up at the trees. And so what you want to do with mindful walking is first to set your intention. You're not only going for a walk, let's say maybe you're going out for exercise, which I always encourage, but you're also going out with the intent to practice mindfulness. So what does that mean? Being present. And the University of Massachusetts, or UMass Memorial Health Center for Mindfulness, they describe as part of that process of mindful walking that you should pay attention to the experience of walking. And what that looks like is you're paying attention to the movement of your body, your weight shifting from one leg to the other leg, when you lift your leg up and down, and that feeling of putting that foot down on the floor or on the ground. Also noticing your arms as they swing. The third step is awareness, and look around you. Put your senses to work. So is the air cool? Did you walk outside and feel that warmth of the sun? I know a few days ago, I got home from work, took my dog out in the backyard, and it was the most breathtaking moment because I walked out, I could feel the sun on my face. Of course, I had sunscreen on because we got to protect our skin too, especially here in Florida. But feeling that warmth on my face, it was just invigorating. And so look around. What colors do you see? You know, in this case, I'm not a horticulturist, but I'm going to guess those are cherry blossoms in this one. And Bill and Terry, you guys have to correct me on that one. But looking around, do you see flowers blooming? Is the grass bright green? Hopefully we'll start to see some more green grass in the coming weeks. We do have spring just around the corner. Is the light filtering through the trees? Do you hear the birds? Do you smell the flowers? So again, it's going through all of those senses. And finally, there's acknowledgement as you're mindful of walking. And if there's distracting sounds or thoughts, again, acknowledge them. They're there. Bring your attention back to that experience of walking. And so the final technique that I want to cover today is mindful eating. Since we've been talking about food systems, I want us to think about mindfulness practice as we eat. And so the first one is, the purpose here, as you can see on the screen, and this is from J.B. Nelson, the purpose of mindful eating is to help individuals savor the moment and the food and encourage their full presence for the eating experience. And I don't know if you've ever had that experience where you sat down to eat, whether it was a snack or dinner or any type of meal, and you look down and your plate is empty. You don't even remember experiencing the meal, tasting the food. It just happened all so fast. So we want to bring our attention onto the food. So how do we do this? On the next slide, you can see the picture on the screen, and it's a young lady. She's holding a cell phone. And this is pretty common when especially if we're eating alone, we may want something to entertain us, whether it's television or a cell phone, but this is a distractor. So one of the first things for mindful eating is you want to remove these distractions. So any type of multitasking, are you sitting at your desk working? We were just talking about that prior to the session today. Are you focused on the food itself, or is it the screen? Use this time as a time to practice not only gratitude for the food that you have, think about where your food comes from. And that's your first step on mindful eating. And then we move on to the second step, which is being purposeful. So when we sit down to eat, sometimes we eat because it's the time to eat. Sometimes it might be triggered by other things. So this is when we want to think about recognizing our emotions. How do you feel? Are you stressed out? Are you happy? Are you sad? Are you bored? You want to make that mind-body connection as to why you might be eating. We want it to be a time for us to be purposeful, to consume nutrients, and to feed our body and give our bodies energy. So that's being purposeful. So step number 3 is awareness. And again, just like mindful walking and you're using your senses, you want to do the same thing with your food. Sometimes you're thinking, probably, I do not have time to be aware when I eat. I just need to eat and go, which is definitely true. But when you have the moments to be mindful when you're eating, be aware of that process, acknowledging any of those external cues that may drive you away from eating and being present for eating. If they distract you from that process, like a screen, again, no judgment. Acknowledge that they're there, be aware of the process, and then come back. So again, that awareness. And then finally, acknowledge, which is what I just talked about, which is, again, no judgment. Acknowledge anything that distracts you. It could be someone mowing the lawn outside, your dog barking, anything, maybe children in the room or family members. Especially when we are working at home, if you had to experience that, again, it's coming back to that acknowledgement. That it's there, and then bring it back. One thing I didn't mention back on awareness is when I was talking about the senses is chewing slowly. That's another important key point in mindful eating, and taking time between each bite. And one tip that you can do is actually putting your fork down in between every bite to allow yourself that time to process. So American Heart Association has a really good activity in the Healthy for Life series that they have. It's a community outreach program. So if check in your counties, you may have some going on at your extension office. But what that activity does is it encourages you to take a food item, or they use an apple, but you could use a raisin. You can see it sometimes with chocolate or like chocolate pieces, but of course we're promoting health and wellness. So a raisin or an apple might be a better choice. And so what you do is you pick up that item, you hold it first, and what does it feel like? So then next steps would be to smell. What does it smell like? Does it smell sweet? Does it smell tangy? Does it, I think we had a session a couple weeks ago, and someone said, well, it smells like an apple. Well, yes, it does. But what does that smell like? Is it sweet or sour? And then you go to take a bite. And when you take a bite, before you start to chew, actually let it sit in your mouth for a moment and let your mouth taste those flavors. And then when you begin to chew chew for a long period of time. And again, focus on your senses. So we've gone through the steps of mindful eating, being attentive to the food, being purposeful, having that awareness as well as acknowledgement. And so benefits to mindful eating. So in addition to the ones I mentioned about mindfulness techniques earlier, what's great about mindful eating is that it may also increase your enjoyment of meals. It's also been found to reduce the actual amount of calorie intake that you have, reducing overeating, also improve digestion. And also, I just think with mindful eating, it allows us to actually enjoy the food that's in front of us. So, okay, next slide. I wanted to share some resources, and I believe Bill's already put many of these in the chat. And some are on mindfulness practices. All of these are free resources. They're mostly videos, but you can go in and there's some breathing techniques and meditation videos from UF Health Shands, also from UF Health. The University of Florida Counseling and Wellness Center has some mindfulness resources there. And if you wanted to practice mindful eating, there is a script, because sometimes when we're practicing mindfulness techniques for the first time, you kind of need some guidance. And a lot of these resources either have videos, but that last one is a printable where you can go through and take yourself through a mindful eating practice. Just some of the references for today's presentation. And next week, and we'll open it up for Q&A here in a minute, but next week, again, we have Preserving Your Harvest. So we'll be talking about home food preservation. So if you do have a garden, it's time to tune in to see how you're going to preserve those foods. And that will be with Luann and Melanie next week.
So Wendy, when I check my email and start emailing people while I'm eating lunch, that's a bad thing?
So it's not a bad thing. It's not mindfulness. It's not practicing mindfulness. You know, and I think, one of the things with mindfulness too is that it's funny because when I was preparing this presentation, I started applying more mindfulness techniques throughout the day. Even from washing my face, I picked up a cotton ball and I was like, wow, this is really soft, but recognizing that and then being able to, clean my face. But it's all about, there was a colleague we had who explained it this way. She said, when you go to wash the dishes, think about you fill up your sink. And when you put your hands in the sink, it's not just scrubbing dishes. What do you feel? You feel the water against your skin. You feel the suds. So it's fully being present for washing the dishes. So making maybe a task that you might not love, make it a little more enjoyable and being mindful. So you can really do this, practice it anywhere. So, but going back to your point, mindfulness, it might be better to take yourself away from your desk, go out in the garden, Bill, enjoy that lunch somewhere
there
where
you go.
you can focus on the food.
Yeah, and I could see where that would be especially helpful when you're eating, because how often have you been watching TV or doing something and you start eating a bag of cookies and before you know it, oh, the bag's empty. I didn't even notice myself eating them. So I could see how it would help regulate and help you better control exactly how much you're consuming.
It does. It helps with portions. And there is some research, quite a bit of research on mindful eating and reduction of binge eating, and also obesity prevention, because now you do have to participate in like an 8-week session of mindful eating and mindful practices to see those results. But there is a lot of positive benefits from mindful eating.
Okay, well, as always, if anybody watching us live has any questions, if you go ahead and put them in the chat box, we'll do our very best to answer them. So hopefully somebody will ask a question.
And mindfulness is a new, go ahead.
I know next week we have Luann and Melanie talking about preserving the harvest.
Yeah.
And that's going to be very interesting because I know that they're going to talk about canning, at least. I know Luann's very knowledgeable with canning. And that's one of those things that maybe, your grandmother used to make pickles or some canned things. You're thinking, oh my gosh, how on earth did she do that? It's really not that hard. You just have to know what you're doing. Otherwise, things don't work out well. Any idea
Yep,
what
and we
else
want to
they're
stay
gonna cover?
safe. And I think they're going to share a little bit about some other techniques of home food preservation, possibly freezing.
Mhm.
And most importantly, given some additional resources on home food preservation. So if you are planning to preserve food at home, whether it's canning or freezing, you'll know where to go. And we did talk a little bit about that in our first session from the winter season. I gave some resources during our first session, but those are going to be incredibly important for maintaining safety because we want to stay food safe, especially if you're pressure canning. So there's some special things to consider when you're pressure canning.
Yes, that's why I said you need to do it correctly. Otherwise, things might not work out very well.
Not so good.
But
With water bath canning.
There's a lot of different ways to preserve food, and I've done drying. I freeze a lot of vegetables out of my garden, and hopefully they'll be able to share a lot of ideas that people maybe hadn't thought of before.
Yeah, most definitely. And hopefully they will share some of the equipment, the current equipment that you can use, and some general guidelines if you do have some equipment at home. Kara, did you have anything else you wanted to add?
Well, I am now motivated to practice mindful eating. So thank you. I may have some questions about that for you later.
Yeah. Sure. Happy to help.
Yeah, I've never tried mindful eating. I'm familiar with mindful meditation, which I need to spend more time at. But now I'm motivated to do that also.
I think it's been, it takes practice. Just like we get up in the morning, we brush our teeth and we get that routine. So it's building that into your routine. And that was one thing in that EDIS document. You can see EDIS Pub Mindfulness. You'll see that in the comments. In there, they give some common barriers that might get in the way of people say, well, I don't have time for mindfulness. That's when you need it the most, is typically when you don't have time. But they give some suggestions in that publication about how to overcome those barriers and begin to practice. Some people say it might be a little bit out of my scope to practice mindfulness. And there's varying degrees. So again, we're just teaching the basics. And that's great, Rick. You'll find that you'll enjoy the walk almost even more so. I love to walk anyway, but when you're mindful walking, you really start to notice the things around you. So, but anywho, that publication does have some great tips on just getting started. And if you haven't tried it before, I do encourage you to, whether it's mindful breathing, mindful eating, mindful walking, anything to support good health and wellness, or mindful gardening.
There you go. And the hardest part is just getting started. And I know a lot of those things, it doesn't take hours and hours every day. It takes as little as 10 minutes. And it's really consistency. Because I tell people when they're putting together any kind of vegetable garden or they're trying to grow something at home, it doesn't take a huge amount of time and work. It just takes consistent time and work. So for example, with the vegetable garden, go out there 5-10 minutes a day, look through your garden, check to make sure everything's under control. You don't have an insect problem, a disease problem. If you do, take a few minutes and figure out what it is, take steps to fix it. So it's just that consistency, not spending half of your day doing it.
And I see we got some folks looking forward to the preservation class too. Oh, good, Rick. I'm glad we were able to introduce you to some new topics. And mindfulness, it goes on and on and on, but trying to keep it focused with food systems and health and well-being. And check out some of those resources as well, because they've got some really cool practices, and it's kind of hit and miss. You have to find one that works best for you.
And when we're done, I'll go back and put all those links in the video description when this gets saved as a video too.
Awesome. And as always, thank you guys for being here today. And we're going to have that simple survey again that we always send out. And we appreciate your feedback. It really helps us to continue doing what we do here in Extension, and make improvements to future sessions and future classes, and give us ideas of things that you want to learn more about. So we appreciate your time that you do spend on those surveys as well.
And I almost
Bill
forgot to put that
into the
link
chat,
in,
so
but I
thank you.
did.
Hey, teamwork makes the dream work, Bill.
Exactly. So
Couldn't do it without you guys.
with that last comment there under Qualtrics link, if you can just take just a moment to click on that. That's a very short survey to just give us an idea of how we're doing and how we can do it better. And other than that, guys, we're going to be back again next Friday morning at 10 a.m.
And we look forward to seeing you. Thanks, Terra, for being here with us today.
Oh, thanks for the invitation. This was so much fun. I enjoyed it. Thank you.
Yeah, it is fun. Thanks, Terra. And I'll get a hold of you about being on my virtual plant clinic sometime also to have
That
a little
would
more
be fun too.
live teaching. Okay, thanks
Sounds
everybody.
good,
Have a great
everyone.
weekend.
Take
Bye-bye.
care. Have a good one.